When my cousin Ben and I were in our early to mid-20s, we took several camping trips around the Sierra Nevada mountains. This happened, I'm sure, when I was 21 years old and he was 22, and it happened in Sequoia National Forest. It was my first time camping there, but not for Ben. It was Wednesday. Our jobs allowed us to have midweek days off, and we often camped then to avoid traffic and crowds. I always let Ben lead these trips. He was an Eagle Scout, not me. We parked near a picnic area and we stepped into the woods from there. After about 15 minutes of hiking deeper into the woods, we found a great spot to set up camp. A great spot meant a large enough open area for 2 tents, a portable stove, and a campfire. The first thing we did was unpack our gear and set up the tents. Ben was always much faster than me at setting up tents. He did it in just a few minutes. I always took more than 20 minutes. Or rather, always took more than 20 minutes, as I haven't camped in the wilderness since this incident. The next thing we did was make a stone ring for the fire, then gather some twigs and wood. He did bring a fire starter and matches, so I guess we were a bit cheaters, but oh well. It was around 6:30 p.m. local time. The sun started to set. Our fire was going, and now Ben was grilling steaks and burgers. One thing about Ben is he always went all out with food on these trips, and he was an excellent cook, so I always trusted him to feed us. Of course, we brought bear spray in case the smell of food would attract black bears, which Ben always said was highly unlikely. He always said the thing you should worry about most in the middle of the woods is other people. As we ate our steaks and burgers, we opened some beers and played classic rock music on the speakers. If you haven't camped before, you won't understand how beautiful moments like these are in the wilderness with friends or family. A few beers, reminiscing about good times, and enjoying music. When it got dark, we started playing cards on the small folding table we brought specifically for cards. After playing more traditional card games, we started playing Uno. And that's when we heard something in the woods. I stopped the music on my phone so the speakers became silent. Now it was obvious. We heard someone humming and footsteps from behind the trees in the pitch-black woods. Ben urged me to find a flashlight. I tried, but by the time I found it, the sounds had faded. I asked Ben if it was something to worry about, and he said it was definitely unusual for someone to be this deep in the woods, let alone walking creepily near a campsite with a lit campfire and humming loudly. I shivered a little, and I could tell Ben did too. We went back to playing cards with much quieter music now. When we least expected it, a large branch landed in the middle of our campsite, startling us both. It didn't fall from a tree, it was thrown at us by someone. Ben started yelling something like, "Whoa, whoever is out there bothering us, get a life." And then footsteps could be heard again in the distance. They were walking away from us. I said we should pack up and move somewhere else. He said, "Absolutely not, in the dark." We both had bear spray, and he suggested I keep mine next to me in my tent when we slept. It was the closest close-range self-defense weapon we had. We continued to hear sounds like breaking tree branches in the distance, sounds you would never expect an animal to make. Someone was out there, possibly multiple people. That was obvious. We had to sleep eventually, so we agreed that maybe we should take turns keeping watch to make sure no one came to our campsite and stole anything or worse. Ben agreed to take the first watch. He said he would stay up and read his book, so I crawled into my tent and then my sleeping bag and went to sleep. Waking up in the middle of the night while camping is normal. You are in a cold outdoor environment in an uncomfortable sleeping bag. Various things can wake you up. I didn't know what woke me up yet. I was still in a haze. My brain hadn't fully woken up. I looked up and saw a head peeking into my tent. It looked like Ben. I rubbed my eyes, but it was actually the darkness that was preventing me from seeing his face. I said, "Ben," thinking he woke me up for my watch. I said in a raspy voice, "Is it my turn?" I stared at the head peeking at me in my sleeping bag, slowly waking up more with every second. Then I heard the tent zipper quickly zip up and his head disappear. I lay back down in my sleeping bag, but only for a moment. I suddenly had a weird moment of clarity where I sat up straight and listened to footsteps walking away. "Ben?" I said. He didn't answer. I unzipped my tent to peek into the campsite. The fire had gone out. Ben wasn't outside. I went to Ben's tent, which was zipped up. I unzipped it and looked inside to see Ben fast asleep in his sleeping bag. I got chills, goosebumps, call it what you will. I almost peed myself when I realized. I started shaking him to wake him up, and when he finally did, I told him, "Someone was here at the campsite." It took him a minute to come back to reality, just like it did me, but when he did, he grabbed his bear spray. He said he must have fallen asleep while reading. He said I should sleep in his tent tonight, but for that I would need my sleeping bag. He came out of the tent with me and stood watch while I ran to my tent to grab my sleeping bag. In my tent, as I was grabbing my sleeping bag, I heard that damn humming again from outside. I grabbed it and Ben whispered to me to be quick. I said, "You heard that too?" He said, "Yeah." We both went back to his tent and zipped it up with the bear spray can on our side. I'm telling you, at those moments I didn't want anything more than for a bear to come and save the day. Hours went by as I stayed awake while Ben slept. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke him up and we took turns. When Ben woke me up, it was almost dawn. There was light outside, so we packed everything up, and by the time we were done, there was plenty of light to hike back to the car. Even though we could have camped another night elsewhere, neither of us wanted to do it again. It was a haunting experience, and I guess we both just wanted to be in the safety of our homes. It's been 6 years since this happened, and he's contacted me a few times since then about camping, but I haven't been too keen since this experience. People are too scary. Why was someone out there stalking our campsite and the sight of that person's head in the dark just looking into my tent? It was truly like a nightmare. I probably won't ever camp again. Honestly, every time I was scared as a child, my father always told me in life that you don't need to be afraid of the unseen. Be afraid of humans because they can truly hurt you. In my early 20s, I received a sum of money after my father passed away and I received an inheritance from him. At the time of my father's death, he and my mother had a villa in the Alps, near the town of Zermatt, Switzerland. The villa had been sold because my mother could no longer afford the mortgage payments, and renting it out wasn't covering her installments either. The villa was going to be put on the market for sale in less than a month and was in the process of finalizing all paperwork with the real estate agent and lawyer. So for that month, the villa would no longer be rented out and would be empty. I saw this as an opportunity to get away for a while and clear my head given everything that had happened. I quit my job, packed my hiking gear, grabbed my dog Shadow, and headed to the villa in my father's car. My first 2 days at the villa went normally and nothing strange happened. I spent my days playing with Shadow in the snow and hiking, and my evenings playing video games or listening to music, drinking, and smoking on the balcony. I had stocked up on food, cigarettes, and liquor, so I was quite isolated, except for the occasional outing to hike with my dog and my game console for entertainment. I was quite content and started to feel relaxed after all the drama that preceded this trip. The villa itself was 2 stories. The ground floor had the living room and a side guest bedroom, as well as a small kitchenette. The upper floor had 2 more rooms, along with a balcony connected to the master bedroom. I spent most of my time in the living room, the kitchen, or the master bedroom. I never ventured into the other rooms and always kept the doors leading to them closed. The 4th day arrived and I was going through my usual routine of playing with my dog, playing games, and watching movies. It snowed quite heavily that day, so instead of hiking, I stayed inside. That's when things started to get a little weird. In our area, there were only 2 other villas adjacent to ours, about a kilometer apart from each other. All the other villas, besides these 2, were about 5 kilometers away from us. Around us was mostly forest and very tall pine trees. These 2 villas were empty, and from the past few days, I knew that no one was staying in them. Around 1 p.m., while outside with my dog, I noticed what appeared to be footprints in the snow around our villa's area. It was still snowing, so the footprints looked semi-fresh, like someone had just been there in the last 15 to 20 minutes before me. I figured maybe someone was staying in the villas near me that I wasn't aware of. Perhaps they were also isolating themselves like me. Oh well, so be it. The footprints led away from my villa and disappeared into the snow towards a denser section of trees. I ignored the footprints and went back inside. Night fell, and I decided to go to sleep. My dog Shadow was lying on the bed with me when I noticed his ears perk up in a listening position. This was followed by him quickly jumping off the bed and running downstairs to the living room. I lay in bed and remained still. I was honestly scared, and I could hear him moving downstairs, pacing. After about 7 minutes, he ran back upstairs to me and started doing his dog dance, as a sign that he needed to pee or he wanted to go outside. Well, fine, I couldn't refuse him, so we both went downstairs to the outside driveway for him to do his business. It's just that he didn't want to pee. As soon as we were outside, he started pulling on his leash, trying to drag me to where he wanted to go. He kept looking towards the dense section of trees where the footprints had been earlier, but he also kept sniffing the side of the house and looking up towards the roof. Once he realized I wasn't going to go where he wanted, he sat down and just stared into the darkness. It was a bit unusual for him, but fine. Maybe there were some forest animals out there he wanted to chase. But me, I didn't want to chase anything. So I pulled him back inside and we both went back upstairs. About half an hour later, I was lying in bed when I heard a sound like footsteps walking on my roof. It was just a series of about 6 steps, and I rationalized that it could have been a pine cone falling from a tree onto the roof, or maybe a well-meaning forest animal running around. But here's the thing, the steps seemed spaced out, like human footsteps, so it really freaked me out. Shadow also heard the sound and quickly ran to the balcony screen door, expecting me to let him out. Well, you know what? I'm a tough guy, and at that point I considered myself pretty burly and strong enough to defend myself, so I grabbed my jacket and boots, as well as my cigarettes and flashlight, and went out onto the balcony. As soon as I was out, I lit my cigarette and started sweeping the roof with my flashlight. There was nothing up there, and the snow on it was undisturbed. Strange. Was it all in my head? What about Shadow hearing the sound? Maybe he was influenced by my paranoia. I started to calm down and relax again. My eyes started to adjust to the darkness, and I continued to smoke and just stared at the stars and the trees beside our villa. That's when I saw it. On a tree slightly taller than our villa, and about 6 meters from the balcony, I saw what looked like a man squatting between 2 branches. It looked incredibly tall, like 2.5 to 3 meters, and very thin. It was squatting on one branch, and its long, strange white arms were stretched out above its head, holding onto the branch above it, while its mouth was wide open in a blank expression. What the hell was this? I wasn't sure if I was actually seeing this thing and just stood staring and sitting still. I saw Shadow stand up and start pacing behind me and softly growling at the same time. The thing still didn't move. I put out my cigarette and debated whether to shine the flashlight on it, but something in my head kept screaming not to. So I backed into the room and pulled Shadow in with me. Once inside, I locked the door and shone the flashlight on where the thing was, but there was nothing there. I closed the screen door curtains and retreated back to bed. But then later that night, I heard a light tapping on the screen door as if someone was tapping on the glass with their fingers. It was consistent and didn't stop for almost an hour. Shadow seemed to be staring at the door, but he wouldn't go near it anymore. The strangest part was that I felt like someone was inviting me to open that door, but at the same time I kept hearing my father's voice in my head telling me to stay in bed and not to do it. I listened to my father's voice and just stayed put. I eventually fell asleep and woke up in the morning. It didn't take me long to pack everything up and get out of there. I had worked as a direct care assistant for a 78-year-old woman with a developmental disability. Her daughter, who was 45, worked overnight, and she needed a nurse with medical experience to care for her for the night. When I say had worked for them, I mean I had actually only worked once that night, and you will hear why I never went back. The 78-year-old woman's name was Mrs. Alara. Her daughter's name who contacted me was Maya. Perhaps Maya did not have any other family members to care for her and did not want to or could not afford to place Mrs. Alara in a nursing home. Or perhaps she felt more comfortable hiring someone with experience to watch over her. At that time, I had already been a direct care worker for 2 other women who suffered from some form of developmental disability, so I had experience, but nothing prepared me for that night. Maya had left for work early that day. I was working my first job, so I was really pushing my body to exhaustion, trying to make as much money as possible. Maya had introduced Mrs. Alara and me. Mrs. Alara had given me a smile before Maya took her upstairs to her room for the night. It was about 9 p.m. Maya had told me that Mrs. Alara would sometimes walk around the house at night, acting confused, and that I should calm her down and escort her back to her room. She specifically said this was not a form of sleepwalking when I asked. She said it was one of her mother's dementia symptoms. I told her not to worry, that I would know how to handle it. I spent my time initially in the living room catching up on my TV shows. These jobs are not too glamorous, and they are mostly just sitting around. I heard footsteps from upstairs. I went to the stairs and looked up the stairs and called out Mrs. Alara's name, asking if she needed anything. She did not answer. I heard her footsteps back into her room and then the door close. Maybe she went to the bathroom. I went back to the living room and watched TV again. It was about an hour later, maybe, that I got up to get the chicken sandwich I brought from the fridge. As I was coming out of the kitchen with my plate and sandwich to return to the sofa, I almost had a heart attack and dropped my plate when I saw Mrs. Alara standing in the doorway. Glass shattered everywhere. I apologized to her and asked if she was okay. She started yelling at me, "Who are you?" I reminded her who I was. I was her direct care worker here to make sure she was okay. Everything she said at this point was with a loud yell. "Why are you here?" "I don't know you." Things like that. I reminded her that we had just met and that her mother, Maya, hired me to watch over her in the house. This seemed to work long enough for me to get her back upstairs with me and into her room. I brought her a glass of water and some melatonin, and voila, I made sure she took both before returning downstairs. After a few hours, I was completely exhausted. I needed to get some sleep. There was a spare bedroom upstairs with a single bed where Maya said I could rest if needed. I figured at this point Mrs. Alara was asleep for the night from the melatonin. I fell asleep in a matter of minutes, but I had only slept maybe about an hour. I woke up to a sound from downstairs. It was a banging sound repeated every 1 to 2 seconds. Something from downstairs was being slammed. I jumped out of bed. I had left the bedroom door open so that I could hear anything if Mrs. Alara woke up, like she did here. When I got to the stairs, I realized the banging sound was coming from the kitchen. I walked down the stairs as fast as I could while still remaining calm. Upon reaching the bottom, I peeked around the opening to the kitchen, and what I saw was like a scene from a horror movie I had watched before. I saw Mrs. Alara in the dark standing in front of the oven, repeatedly opening and slamming it shut. It was terrifying. When I say I saw Mrs. Alara, I really only saw her silhouette. It was very dark in the kitchen. I said, "Mrs. Alara," very loudly, and she stopped, turned to her left towards me, closed the oven door for the last time, and started walking towards me, towards the stairs. I said in a now softer and slightly fearful voice, "Are you okay?" She approached me until I could now see her facial features, and she stared at me with a blank expression and walked past me and started up the stairs. I followed her upstairs, but as soon as she got to her room, she slammed the door shut. I knocked on the door saying, "Mrs. Alara, are you okay?" She did not answer. I quietly opened the door just to peek inside, and I saw Mrs. Alara next to her bed, just standing facing the wall. I had seen a lot of things, but this was quite disturbing behavior that I figured was exactly what you would see in some horror movies like I mentioned before. I walked over to her and gently helped her into bed. As she lay down, I tucked her in, and what I hoped would be the last time, I said, "Good night, Mrs. Alara," and closed her door. I walked across the upstairs to the spare bedroom and went back to sleep. I deliberately tried not to fall asleep for at least a half hour in case she woke up again, but I don't even know if I made it that long. All I know is that I fell asleep very quickly. I woke up again, however, much later. The room was still pitch black, and the digital alarm clock I had set had not gone off. I looked around the room, wondering what woke me up. I didn't see it until I heard a noise from inside the closet. I then saw the closet door slightly ajar and the black shadow of a head peeking out of the closet. Once again, I almost had a heart attack. I said, "Mrs. Alara?" She did not answer. I kept saying Mrs. Alara multiple times until she pushed the door open and I saw her approaching the bed slowly. She started saying what she had said hours ago again. "Who are you?" "I don't know you." As she approached, I tried to calm her down, reminding her who I was. I reached for the bedside lamp and fumbled around until it turned on. Mrs. Alara was holding a large kitchen knife in her hand. At this point, everything changed. Mrs. Alara was now a threat to my life, and I had to worry about myself, not her. I yelled at this point, "Mrs. Alara, put the knife down." I guess my yelling stressed her out because she approached and started yelling back at me, still repeating, "I don't know you." I was not going to try to calm down a dementia patient holding a knife. That was not in any job description. I mapped out a way to run around her in the bedroom, and I did. I jumped out of bed on the farther side from her, and she yelled again, "Who are you?" She swung the knife in the air as I ran past her. It was a slow, weak swing from what I could tell, but it showed nonetheless that she had the intent to actually use it. I went downstairs and grabbed my sneakers and went outside. Instead of calling 911, I called Maya, as she had asked me to do if there were any problems. I was being polite in doing this because involving law enforcement never benefited anyone. Maya yelled at me on the phone not to leave her, and honestly, I yelled back that she was trying to kill me and that I was not calling the police. She had to leave work, of course. I stayed outside the house, making sure Mrs. Alara did not go anywhere until Maya returned. When Maya came in, Mrs. Alara was already back in her bed asleep. Maya even accused me of exaggerating the entire incident until she found the knife next to Mrs. Alara's bed. In order not to give her more reason to blame me for all of this, I did not say that I had slept at all. But that did not mean I felt I had done anything wrong. Maya even offered me the room to sleep in. I never worked at that house again. Mrs. Alera was a scarier patient than any I had handled in any job in my 9 years as a direct care assistant. This happened when I was little, maybe around 8 years old. My parents had me at an age that wasn't young anymore. Both my siblings were at least 10 years older than me. I woke up in the middle of the night due to a commotion from downstairs one night around 2:15 a.m. It was my parents. I slightly opened my bedroom door on the second floor and heard my parents panicking about something. I wasn't sure what it was. I went to the stairs and stood at the top calling out, "Mom." "Dad?" My mother came down the stairs and said to me, "Go back to sleep." I obeyed without asking. I could tell they were stressed about something. I tried to go back to sleep when I heard the front door downstairs slam shut around 2:30 a.m. and then silence. I assumed they had left the house, but I wasn't sure why. Anyway, I listened to my mother and went back to sleep. I woke up again to sounds downstairs once more around 3 a.m. It was the sound of the front door of our house at Jalan Melati number 12 closing and then footsteps, but no talking. Naturally, I assumed they were home and were just being quiet so as not to wake me. I heard footsteps and the occasional thud from downstairs. I heard drawers and cupboards in the living room being opened and closed, and I'm sure I heard the refrigerator being opened too. I thought it was my brother Bima, who was 10 years older than me, and at that time he could already drive. So he often went out and came home late, so him coming home at 2 a.m. and rummaging through the refrigerator wasn't unusual at all. These were all things I told myself, logical explanations for what I was hearing. Finally, I heard footsteps going up the stairs, getting louder and closer until they reached the top and then headed straight for my door. My door opened slowly and quietly. I didn't sit up or move. I just opened my eyes facing the door as I lay there. There were no lights on outside my room. Whoever was walking around was doing so in the dark, so all I saw was a black blob on my doorstep resembling the shape of a person's head. I called out every name from Bima to Mom to Dad, then I just said, "Who's there?" They didn't answer. They just closed the door and I was left confused but a little scared. I heard footsteps going back downstairs. I was sure it was my father now, just coming to check on me after coming home, though I wasn't sure why he was ignoring me. I hadn't heard anything from downstairs for a while now. I let my curiosity get the better of me, and I went downstairs in the dark. I left all the lights off as I approached the kitchen and froze at the doorway, seeing a tall figure standing right in the middle of the kitchen. I said, "Dad?" assuming it was him based on the size of this person. A deep voice said, "Go back upstairs." I ran back up the stairs to my room and closed the door and jumped under the covers. All I could think was, why did my father's voice sound like that? The reality of a stranger being in the house didn't cross my innocent little mind until sometime later when I heard the front door open and the commotion downstairs again, the voices of my parents. This happened around 3:30 a.m.